Time to pull up a chair and talk. Tonight we continue our divisional breakdown. I am your host, where we go through each division.
I'm Don
every
Detweiler.
team, providing you with the information you need and to know heading into the RoD Dynasty podcast. Next up, the AFC East. But before we get into tonight's show, do me a favor. Give us a follow on Twitter at RoD Dynasty and check out our website, riderdynasty.com, for our latest articles. And now, the news. Rob, ESPN's Courtney Cronin reported that Irv Smith is shining in red zone drills, which is a very specific statement to make. Now, NBC Sports Edge continued saying that Smith will essentially be the wide receiver 3 for the Vikings. Do you believe that Irv Smith ends up with the third most targets in Minnesota?
Was that a typo? Shining, not hiding?
No, it said shining.
I mean, if I had to take a guess, I would say he gets the third most targets by default, but I don't think that's a lot of targets for him, and he doesn't strike me as a big red zone weapon threat. I think Justin Jefferson might be taller than him.
And better.
Yeah, and much better.
I'm not buying Irv Smith this year. I'm not buying him at all. We talked about that last week. I don't care what Courtney says. I don't buy it.
I'm a height supremacist when it comes to my tight ends.
Well, at least you're honest about it. Don, Jay Morrison reported that Joe Burrow is turning the ball over multiple times in every practice, citing that, quote, throws that felt like layups last year are dropping harmlessly away from receivers or easily broken up by multiple defenders. Is this a quarterback working his way back into game shape, or are we seeing an issue with possible yips?
No, it's definitely a guy working his way back from a major injury. He's almost a year away from football at this point, so just getting back and getting in the rhythm, trusting his leg, being able to drive off and really drive the ball down the field. This is just getting back in the swing. This isn't anything to cause long-term scare.
No concern whatsoever.
No, he's going to be fine.
All right, then I will trust you. Well, now on to the main topic. Training camps are in session and the news is flowing. Most importantly, we are getting ready for the fantasy season to kick off the AFC East with the reigning division champ, the Buffalo Bills. Kit, what's going on up in Buffalo?
All right, so I have the joy of doing the Buffalo Bills. Last year, the Bills finished 13-3. No coaching changes here. There was some buzz that their offensive coordinator was going to get a job elsewhere, but he stuck around. Can't really see them having any philosophical or situational changes. They basically had their best season they've had in 20 years. Looks like they have their franchise quarterback. So I imagine it's going to be more of the same, basically, is what Buffalo wants, at least for this year.
Who is your first most important player?
My first most important player is Josh Allen. He's consistently run for rushing touchdowns, right? He's had more than 8 touchdowns or more in each of his first 3 seasons. I don't expect that to go away. It seems like that's an effective move for them near the goal line. He's big, he's strong, and I expect that to basically continue because I don't think they really trust their running backs in that situation either. I could see his passing volume coming down a little bit, or his passing efficiency come down a little bit. Before last year, he hadn't necessarily been a top-end passer. That does look like he figured it out, and I know that generally can happen in a quarterback's third year. But I think we could see some regression in that regard. 37 touchdowns is pretty high for him. On the passing side, I could see something more like 30 there. So I think he's probably a top 6 finish this year, not necessarily a top 3 finish. That being said, he's young. He's likely to get locked up here. If not before the season, they'll regret it and have to pay him more after the season. And so, in terms of a dynasty asset, really, really pretty much one of the best you can get in Superflex. And again, they had their best season in 20 years. I don't see them fundamentally changing the way they run their offense. So, his high volume of passing, I think, should still sustain to some extent. The second most important player is Stephon Diggs. And we're going to go here. Really, the biggest thing here is just targets, right? He's always been a very talented player. He had some pretty mediocre quarterbacks throwing him the ball, before this year. And an offense that maybe he'd always sort of shared the offensive target share with someone else who was fairly talented. Last year, he had 166 targets, which is good for most in the league. That translated to 127 catches. He could have some regression in regards to yards and catches. I mean, I know they brought in Emmanuel Sanders, but I don't see Sanders as a major competition. But could see those targets come down a little bit. And so maybe he doesn't have 127 catches, next year. But he was also relatively unlucky for touchdowns, scoring 8, with 166 targets. So I could see, those targets coming down a little bit, the yards coming down a little bit. But then, him scoring, 10, 12 touchdowns, something like that. And ultimately kind of balancing that out. So I think, again, 27 years old, pretty elite dynasty asset. And I think for this year and probably next couple, he's somebody you can expect to finish as a wide receiver 1 with like a floor of wide receiver 15, even if things don't go, as I see them going.
Who would be your most overhyped player?
In regards to players I'm not buying the hype on, my first player I'm not buying the hype on is Dawson Knox. And I don't know how much hype there really is on Dawson Knox. It seems like this time every year there's 5 or 6 athletic tight ends who are young, who start to get some buzz. They have a cool training camp catch or two. And then people talk about, some of the things they did, how some of their metrics or athletic profile, shows that they could be a weapon if used properly. I'm not buying it with Dawson Knox. He looked pretty lost in the first 2 years of playing. He did flash, on some plays, but I think he's another one where, he's going to get some hype and buzz as we get closer to the season, and then he's going to go out and have, 35 catches for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And so the offense has never really prioritized the tight end. Like I said, their focus really is on Stephon Diggs, and they added Manny Sanders. So I don't see Knox ever stepping into a major target role, which is what you basically need in order to be an effective tight end. My second player I'm not buying the hype on is Zack Moss. And maybe there isn't that much hype on Zack Moss. I've heard a little bit recently, rumblings that he's definitely the back to own in Buffalo, that he gets high value running back touches. I think I saw someone saying on Twitter, which I basically disagree with. I think Josh Allen gets most of the high value running back touches because he's the goal line back for them. And he, really it's about where he's going, right? He's running back 34 off the board in ADP, going around 110 overall. And if you look at the other players that are available around there, they're just players I'd rather have. Now, I don't know what people are trading for him in Dynasty. I definitely wouldn't give up a second round pick. But I didn't see anything in his first year that really excited me. And he's been coming back off of an ankle injury. I guess he's finally ramped up and playing at full speed. But again, the fact that he had that injury is definitely a concern. Maybe lost some reps to Singletary and Breida. It's going to be harder for him to carve out a top-notch role that makes him the guy.
Do you have any deep stashes on this roster?
And for 2 players at the end of my bench, the first player actually is Devin Singletary. And I think that is basically just based on his relative value. He's going 3 rounds after Zack Moss as running back 42. And he's always been an effective runner. He's a 4.8 career yards per carry. Showed he could catch the ball a little bit last year. I don't see him as necessarily a viable play this year, if Moss stays healthy. But I do think he's somebody who, if Moss was to go down, could be an effective flex weekly flex play, and also somebody who could have some success elsewhere if they do decide to move on from him, in a year or two. He's small, but he does some things that I think are very effective from the running back position, and if given like a little bit more of an opportunity, could be somebody who is worth playing with regularity. And again, a big part of this is price. I think you could get Devin Singletary for a 3rd round pick in most leagues. Maybe that's optimistic, but I would give up that 3rd round pick just to kind of have him on the back of my bench and see what happens there.
Anyone else on this roster?
The second player I'm stashing at the end of my bench for future would be Mitch Trubisky. I think that obviously, if you had Mitch, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, right? He gave you what looked like a promising second season, and then came crashing and burning in his 3rd season, and then again, I believe in his 4th. And so, this is kind of the perfect opportunity for him. I think he'll he'll learn a little bit more about how to be an NFL quarterback. Obviously, he only got a 1-year deal. It seemed like they had kind of a mutual agreement that he's insurance in case Allen got hurt, and also the opportunity to maybe sort of revitalize his career. And so, again, I don't expect anything this year, but I could expect, I could see something where, near the beginning of the season, if there was an injury, he got traded, or more likely, next year he establishes himself as somebody in a quarterback competition, who could come out and become a starter for another year or two. He is somebody who always offered a little bit of rushing upside, and if he doesn't completely melt down, somebody who, likely could be at least viable in Superflex leagues.
Now that we are done up in snowy Buffalo, let's head down a little more south to sunny Florida. Don, what's going on in Miami?
Sunny Florida, it is. Miami is very interesting. The coaching staff is largely intact coming back from last year, and they're really starting to put things together very well. They had a pile of draft picks that they've invested in trying to really build out the roster. So we're expecting a team that should be able to push the ball down the field, but still likes to run and maintain that so that it doesn't overexpose a defense that is getting better, but still probably isn't quite there yet.
Okay, so we expect them to take a step forward this year. Who would you say is their, let's say, most important fantasy player?
Oh, the single most important player, fantasy or otherwise, is Tua. Last year they had their change of pace and reliable veteran in, well, I guess reliable, in Fitzmagic. Or Fitztragic, whichever, you never know what you're getting. But anyway, they had him there to try and kind of move Tua along, challenge him, and kind of take over when things got bad or difficult for a rookie coming into a system. This year, it's all Tua all the time. We have to hope that he is everything that he was hyped and made out to be coming out of Alabama. We know the intangibles are there. We know the work ethic is there. What we don't know that's there is the ability to stay healthy. We don't know that the arm strength is there, and really the entire season here in Miami hinges around Tua taking the big step forward.
Yeah, he is definitely the linchpin in that offense. Now, who would your second most important player be?
For me, it's Myles Gaskin. The second most important player here is a running back that's going to be capable of both providing an outlet that's effective and reliable for Tua and someone who's able to take extra pressure off the passing game, particularly with Fuller being a little banged up already and being suspended for a game and so forth. We heard Jalen Waddle has possibly re-aggravated his ankle. There's additional uncertainty there. Preston Williams is coming back off an ACL. So there's inconsistency, let's say, with some of the weapons. So a reliable running game will be this young quarterback's absolute best friend. And Gaskin seems to be positioned to be the best of the crew that they've assembled.
Now, in the Ryder Dynasty tiers, he is currently ranked as RB39. Do you see him finishing above RB39 this year?
Yeah, I definitely see him finishing above RB39, provided that they don't try to change everything around and make a huge committee. But in his limited time last year, he definitely showed enough that he's able to take 20 or so touches and could end up with kind of like a Raheem Mostert kind of season if everything goes his way.
Are there any players on the Dolphins that you're just not buying into the hype?
Oh, the Dolphins. So the tough part about this here is Jalen Waddle came in super hyped, but we were super hoping that his ankle was going to respond to everything that went through. And hearing that his ankle injury was already re-aggravated a little bit kind of does give me the yips about him a little bit. The other one is Will Fuller was getting a pile of talk, and I don't get it. He's never been consistent. He's always that incredible boomer bust player, and unless you're playing best ball, I just don't want him.
Especially that he's already hurt as far as Fuller goes. Waddle does seem to have recovered from that initial injury, and he seems to be practicing well from what I heard. So hopefully he's able to provide Tua with the weapon they need. Now, do you have any two players that you're throwing at the end of your bench, like a deep stash?
So, guys, I want to kind of stash here. I think Hunter Long has some real potential as a tight end here. Definitely had the chops coming out of college and raised some eyebrows a little bit with Mike Gesicki already there. Gesicki's kind of an average athlete dude. He's been at the back end of the tight ends for at least the top 12 tight ends for a while now, and we kind of know what he is. I think Hunter Long has the opportunity to mesh in and grow with that position. The other person I'd be interested in getting and just kind of stashing is Malcolm Brown, just to kind of hedge my bets and make sure that I have that backfield particularly covered with somebody who's likely to get red zone touches.
In my opinion, which you didn't ask for, but I always offer, I think Malcolm Brown ends up being as the more valuable back this year on that team. Not that I don't trust Gaskin, but I don't really trust Gaskin. I know what Malcolm Brown is, and I think he can be successful as the two-down bruiser that they need. Now, I don't have any data to back me up on that fact that he's going to get more touches, but that's where I'm leaning. Rob, anybody on that roster you're looking at?
I think Don did a great job of hitting the important players. I've got a lot of love for Hunter Long this offseason. And, the one thing I will say is I don't have the confidence that Don has in Myles Gaskin either. I know the Dolphins have made a lot of coaching changes on the offensive side of the ball this year. Last year, they seemed to want to be a one running back kind of team. I don't know if that's the case this year, and I'm a little nervous, especially with bringing in Malcolm Brown and another bigger back. And I liked everything Don said about Tua. I've been a vocal Tua not believer after year one, but I think he's doing all the right things in camp so far, and I think it's a little more than smoke at this point. I think he's really, really starting to master the offense.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at the team as a whole, I mean, Preston Williams might be somebody. He has flashed whenever he's been healthy, but he hasn't been healthy that often. So he is somebody I'm keeping an eye on. Possibly Lynn Bowden. He was somebody who garnered a lot of interest being drafted by the Raiders, then traded to Miami last year as a running back. He ended up playing wide receiver towards the end of the year and has officially changed his designation. He was a do-it-all player at Kentucky, playing quarterback, kind of forced into that role. So, I think it might take him a little bit of time to develop his skills, but I think he might end up being a worthwhile slot-type receiver on the team. Don, anybody else you want to touch on in Miami?
Another one you really should make note of is Salvon Ahmed in the running back group. He's kind of like a light version of Myles Gaskin, or at least a similar type player. These are guys who are probably going to do the bulk of catching the swing passes, the screen passes, and running to the outside, the stretch formation. So if they get the volume and are used in that way, with PPR being what it is, that may be where the bulk of the running back points come from.
Yeah, and don't forget, not only are they similar type players, they both came from the University of Washington, correct?
Yeah, they're both Huskies.
They're both Huskies. Both Huskies. Well, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of Huskies, no, I'm just kidding. Rob's not chunky. That would have been a great transition if you could put on some LBs, buddy.
I'm trying.
So let's go up to New England. My favorite place, because my wife and all of her family are from New England. And tell me what's going on with the Pats.
I mean, they finished last year. It was not a great year in New England. They missed the playoffs for the first time in eternity. They finished 7-9 and third in the AFC East, ahead of only JJ and Adam Gase's Jets. Vegas has them with a modest improvement this year. They've got a projected win total of 9.5 wins. There's been a little bit of changes in the coaching staff. I believe they named a new quarterback coach. Their existing one, or their previous one, left. Speaking of Adam Gase, their new quarterback coach came from the Jets, which is a little concerning.
The stony silence you just heard was because of the Jet slander that keeps coming from you.
It's
you
more Adam Gase slander.
That's true, and I'll take Adam Gase slander every day of the week. So who are the two most important fantasy players up there?
I'm going to start with Damian Harris. He's currently... he goes anywhere at the back half of RB2, early RB3 in a lot of drafts. And I think this year, if everything goes right, he can deliver a low-end RB2 finish. I'm not expecting fireworks, but he's young. He's a popular breakout pick for a reason. Every beat reporter in New England says that he's the guy and believes that he gets the volume. My biggest issue with Damian Harris is that he's not going to get the touchdowns as long as Cam Newton is there, and he's not going to get the receiving work as long as Cam Newton is the quarterback and as long as James White's on the team. So I think you have to temper your expectations this year, but the arrow is certainly pointing up, and whenever the Mac Jones era begins, things could be looking a lot better for him. He could easily vault into the RB1 territory, especially with James White. Most definitely. I have to imagine he leaves after this season.
You would expect that to happen. Who is your second most valuable player?
It was tough to name a second most valuable player for the Patriots. I almost passed on it, but I'll take Cam as my second most valuable player. I firmly believe that he will hold on to the job as long as the Patriots are in playoff contention. And that will be a long while this season. They get to beat up on the Jets twice. But I mean, if it's not Cam Newton, who else do you want on the team? He's even more value if you're a 4-point per passing touchdown league as opposed to a 6. I prefer the 4. I don't know what the industry standard is these days. I feel like it's a 50-50 toss-up. But in his first 8 games, he was a QB1 in 6 of those 8 games. He suffered with some lingering COVID effects last season, and he's mastering a very complex offense. And I think they won ugly early last year, and Bill Belichick does not care how he wins. He just wants to win football games. They're going to do it again this year, and they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel, heavy tight end sets with the signings they made this offseason.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I think actually Cam can have a QB2 finish. Not the QB2, but I don't know if people consider him a top 15 QB, but if he starts the whole year and makes the progress that they think he has made.
As far as Dynasty ranks are concerned, I mean, he's no business being top 15, but as far as, this season finish, absolutely. Yes. I think he can finish top 15. And just today, Josh McDaniels came out and had a quote about Cam, and he says that this offseason, Cam understands why we're doing plays, not just what we're doing. And I thought that speaks volumes to, his getting a lot more comfortable in the offense this year.
I really wish Bill Belichick wouldn't let his assistants speak again. Who are the 2 players you are not buying hype on?
Oh, man, it's a 2-for-1 value here at the tight end position. I can just say every tight end on the New England roster is never going to be fantasy relevant. We can take more than 2, but we can pick on Jonnu and Hunter here. I think this is a low-volume passing offense. They're both about the same in ability as receiving, and they're both going to cannibalize each other. I don't think either finishes even in the top 18 at tight end position unless one of the other ones gets injured. You're basically hoping, if you take Jonnu or Hunter, you are hoping that the other tight end gets hurt. Otherwise, you are going to hate starting them on a week-to-week basis. You will never know which one's going to catch a touchdown, and you will never know which one to start.
So you don't think either will finish as a top 18. Now understand, a top 18 tight end basically has to go like 2 for 20 a game and maybe 2 touchdowns over the year. Top 18 is not a high hurdle.
I was being generous. I actually have them statted out as the 22 and 24th best tight end. I was being generous, giving myself a little buffer at 18. I think it will be worse than that.
22 and 24. Who was 22? Jonnu?
I've got Hunter 2 spots ahead of Jonnu.
Okay.
I'm firmly Camp Hunter as far as him being a better player, but I mean, I still don't want him on my team.
All right. Well, I mean, are there players at the end of your bench who you're willing to grab from the Patriots? Like, who are your deep stashes on this team?
I'm going to throw out a 2-for-1 here. And for my first sleeper pick, I'm going to say pick a Patriots wide receiver. Take Nelson Aguilar. Take Jacoby Myers. Hope that one of them does something. I think it's going to be Aguilar, but I think there's a strong case to be made for either of them being the wide receiver 1. Follow the beat reporters closely. Watch a couple preseason games. And hope you pick the guy that breaks out.
And your second deep stash, or was that both of them?
My second deep stash is Ramondre Stevenson. And he's a reluctant deep stash. I did not like his college tape, but I think he has a chance for some goal line work. He's a little bigger than Damian Harris, especially if Mac Jones becomes the starter. And there's not any hype coming out of him on camp right now. His running back coach came out and said, what does he like about Ramondre Stevenson? And he said, he's here. And he said, what does he need to improve? And his response was everything. And, unless he improves everything, he will never be a quality NFL running back.
See, that's the worst thing about New England. You never know if it's like New England snark or if it's like legit he came in overweight, underprepared, and doesn't know how to be a pro yet.
I will note, I believe that there's a lot of snark coming out of New England always, but the same time last year, that same running back coach was crushing hard on J.J. Taylor. And I thought J.J. Taylor was a good running back. He did nothing last year, so who knows?
Yeah, I don't know if I trust anything those coaches say. It seems that 80% of the coaches that come from New England are trying to be Bill Belichick. And the last I checked, nobody is. So they all try to go with that gruff, tough, I'm going to talk like tough about my players. And really, unless you're Bill Belichick, it comes off as phony and just meaningless. Like they're trying to harken back to some old school coach that they once were. And Josh McDaniels was never an old school coach. He's a young punk of a coach who walked out on Indy. So I have a hard time lending any gravitas to anything that comes from a non-Belichick coach on that team.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be
There's a reason every single one of those coaches flamed out when they went to other teams and took head coaching roles. And I think you hit it right on the head there.
It also wouldn't be the first time that a coach has tried to use the media and press statements to motivate a player, either directly or indirectly, just by what they're hearing and what's being said about them.
It's such a horrible way to go about motivating somebody, but it's just one of the problems with hiring. We talked about it last week with Minnesota. The old guard just getting more and more chances, and it just builds this idea that you have to coach this old way in order to be successful. And I don't think it's true. I don't believe it. But, Don, are there any other players on this team that you're looking at as a deep stash?
So I've always been kind of intrigued with Kendrick Bourne, and I'm hoping that this is the year and the new situation for him that allows him to break out and kind of get out from under the shadow of some of the other wide receivers around him. It's a wide open wide receiver room. I don't see why he couldn't have a significant role.
Yeah, the only guy I'm kind of looking at, I love Jacoby Myers, but he's definitely not a deep stash. Everybody knows him. N'Keal Harry, some people are talking about. It is his third year. Maybe he will get traded and break out somewhere else. I don't know. I don't see many deep stashes on this roster right now. I know before free agency, it was one of the weakest rosters in the league offensively. I don't know if there's anybody that I would stash. All right. Well, as you can tell by my Patriots vitriol, I might not be a fan of that team. And I'll tell you why. Because I am a Jets fan. Yes, I admit it. It might be hard to tell from all the Jets jokes that I take, but I love the Jets. Now, they had a complete overhaul with their coaches. They brought in Robert Saleh, comes from the 49ers as the defensive coordinator for the past 4 years. He's a player's coach. He's hard-nosed. He's energetic. Players love playing for Robert Saleh. They bring in an offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur. Last 4 years, he was the passing game coordinator for Kyle Shanahan and was with the Falcons as an offensive assistant before that. This is going to be a Shanahan-style offense. The defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, last 6 years under Dan Quinn as the linebackers coach. He's basically going to run the Robert Saleh offense. Philosophy, everything is different this year. Look for a team rebuilding the locker room from the ground up. It won't take long to see if it is working or if the players are buying in. But already, the tone out of training camp is so much more peaceful than it has been for the last 3 years. You don't hear about the fighting. You don't hear about the backbiting. It's just football. And that's all I want as a Jets fan.
Yeah, it was definitely change for the sake of betterment. And I loved the hire. I thought it was a great get. And I'm excited for what the Jets can be. But JJ, what do you think here? What are some important fantasy players coming on this roster?
You know, not to double up with what you said, but the most important fantasy player on this team is the young QB, Zach Wilson. I mean, where he goes, so goes the Jets. Obviously, they just signed Josh Johnson to be his backup because they don't have anybody else, right? It's a very thin depth chart at quarterback. So the Jets need to be they need him to be a top 12 QB type of player. He doesn't have to be a QB1, just that top 12 talent. I think he has that, but the biggest question mark is above the shoulders. Does he have the toughness to compete on the highest level? Something that he never had to do at BYU.
Anybody else that stands out to you, JJ?
Well, I'm going to stick with the rookies because of how bad their roster has been. Elijah Moore is the rookie getting all of the hype in camp, and he is going to be expected to perform this year. Now, with Corey Davis and the crew, the wide receivers are not necessarily a strong group, so there is plenty of target opportunity for Elijah Moore. The Jets are going to need a wide receiver 1. I don't know if Corey Davis is a wide receiver 1, but if he can't be it, they sure are hoping that Elijah Moore can grow into that role.
Certainly wouldn't be the first team to try to get by with 2 or 3 wide receiver 2 types and still be fairly effective at what they're doing. But there's got to be some guys with some hype around them that you're just not buying into. Who do you think falls in that category?
Now, I don't know if Denzel Mims is getting any hype anymore, but he was just drafted early last year. And is it too early to throw in the towel? Because I'm waving it. Throw the damn towel! Right? Like Rocky IV. I'm throwing the towel, though. Right? I'm saving Apollo on this one. I don't know why we drafted him. I didn't like him last year. I definitely don't like him this year. I want nothing to do with Denzel Mims. Even if he does well, he's just one of those guys that I'm not going to touch. The other guy, Don, who I'm not buying the hype on, is Tyler Kroft. Now, there's not a lot of hype, but because Herndon's bad, I know, it doesn't mean Kroft is going to be a thing, right? They already have Jordan Matthews coming in for a workout, trying to find something at tight end, which means that Tyler Kroft might not be, tickling their fancy. I don't know if that's a saying, but it will be now. Tyler Kroft has had a tight end 15 finish in 2017. Little known fact. 42 catches, 404 yards, 7 TDs. But that is his absolute ceiling, and I don't think he gets there.
Yeah, he was definitely a guy we saw on waiver wires not so long ago and making kind of some noise, I guess, with what goes for hype on a very young roster. And speaking of the very young roster, I loved what they did personally on the offensive line. I thought it was amazing. But to go with that, what are we doing here for guys that you just need to stash on the roster?
Well, if Michael Carter, if you can get him on your team, I don't know how great he's going to be this year. He's not a sleeper, but I think he might be the better Tar Heel back in the draft. I like him more than Javonte Williams. I think he's going to have a better NFL career than Javonte. But look for him to be the lead back this year in the committee and put up an RB2 finish for the team, as long as he's healthy. That's always my caveat. But second deep stash, Keelan Cole. The Jets have something for this guy. And reportedly, they were trying to get him last year. So Joe Douglas sees something in Keelan Cole. Now, I don't believe in Mims. I said that earlier. And I can see where Cole taking the outside role opposite of Elijah Moore in the slot, I would be happy with that. I'm expecting a similar year to last year, which seems reasonable. Last year, he had 55 catches for 642 yards, 5 TDs. You could do worse than that with a sleeper, somebody you can probably pick up towards the last few picks in your draft. So my two stashes, my two sleepers, Michael Carter's definitely not a sleeper. But Michael Carter and Keelan Cole. Now, guys, are there any Jets that you guys are looking at?
I still am a Denzel Mims truther. I liked his tape coming out of Baylor. I think he's going to take a few years to learn the nuances of the NFL. I don't think this is his year, and by all means, not a single report from camp would say otherwise. He's running with the wide receiver twos for a reason, but I think he's a guy. He's an athletic freak, and once he refines his route running, learns the nuances of the wide receiver position in the NFL, I can see big things happening.
Yeah, / learns how to run a route, because the only route he ever had to run at Baylor was go.
There's no defense down there. No defense.
Run far, run fast, ball, get there. That was the offense. I'm kind of interested in Ty Johnson a little bit. I think he's kind of an interesting guy. He showed up a little bit last year. I'd like to see him get a role here. He's a bigger kid. He's just interesting, and I'd like to see him get a shot.
I don't think he's a bad running back at all. I like that pick.
I don't think he's bad either. I think if you're in a best ball league, you can probably get a couple of these guys, Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, maybe even a Josh Adams, if it's a deep roster in a best ball, and just throw a late pick at one of them and hope they hit. Because somebody besides Michael Carter is going to put up points on a weekly basis. Because he is definitely not going to be the lead back getting 80% of the carries at all. As somebody else just to throw deep, and I know he's a local kid, so I always talk about Kenny Yeboah. In a wide open tight end room, there's worse people to throw a dart at than Kenny Yeboah. Well, that's the end of the AFC East. So that means it's time for a game with Don. Don, you put together some questions for us tonight.
Let's see how this all goes. It's kind of an interesting deal. It went well last week and the week before, so we'll give it a shot again. All right, gentlemen, question numero uno for the AFC East. The AFC East champion will have 12 wins over or under. That's a record of 12-5 in the new 17-game season. Rob, we'll start with you. Over under 12 wins for the winner of the division.
I'll take the over. I think Buffalo can beat that by one game. I don't feel comfortable, but if I had to guess, I'd pick they beat it.
I will also take the over. I think Buffalo could hit that 12 mark. I think the Patriots have a chance of getting there as well, only because that defense is back and in rare form, and like you said, they don't mind winning ugly, and they have a team built to win ugly.
That said, now that you've mentioned a couple, the AFC East has 1.5 playoff teams, over under. We'll go with JJ on this.
Wow, 1.5. So are there going to be 2 playoff? Yes, there will be 2 playoff teams. Sure there will. I mean, if I think 2 teams are going to have more than 12 wins, that means there's going to be 2 playoff teams. So if I'm not being a phony, I have to say yes. So I'm taking the over.
Rob, over under.
I'll also go there, but I think the Dolphins have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Patriots do this season.
Don, you're not answering these questions. 12 wins. Does a team have over 12 wins?
Yeah, I think Buffalo does. I think Buffalo has over 12. I have them at 13 as well. And I'll just go right in. I'm taking the under here. I think one team from the East gets in on the playoffs. I just don't see enough wins to go around with some other really good teams. I think the AFC North puts out 2, and I think the West puts out 2.
Definitely could see that happening.
Who thought the only team entering the season here with an established quarterback would be Buffalo? Of the other 3, we got Tua, we got Cam/Mac, and then we've got Wilson. Who of those 3 turns in a better than QB 20 season? Rob?
I will say that both Cam Newton and Tua both finish above QB 20.
JJ? Of the 3, is there a better than QB 15 in the pile?
Yeah, I think Tua. Yes, I think Tua will finish above, either at or above QB 15.
Very interesting. See, I just don't see a QB 15 in this division this year. I just think there's going to be too much cannibalism in between and too much hope in Miami, and I just think that offense is going to go bang at some point when everybody is either hurt or damaged in some way. All right. The running backs throughout the division are a total grab bag of hope and promises and probably lies. Of the mess, who from this pile is an RB20 or better campaign?
Josh Allen.
That's probably the right answer, is Josh Allen. But realistically, though, as someone listed as a running back, from the East here, do we have a RB20 or better coming out of the AFC East?
I think Damian Harris and Michael Carter are the only two that can do it. I don't have a lot of confidence in either of them doing it, though. So I'll say no.
JJ?
Yeah, I have a guy, and it's nobody you mentioned. Zack Moss. Zack Moss had a decent rookie year. He had some injuries that held him back. I don't think Josh Allen continues this remarkable increase in his passing efficiency. I think they run more, and I think Zack Moss will easily outclass Devin Singletary and put up a, what did you say, RB15 or better?
RB20 or better.
Yeah, Zack Moss will finish in the top 20.
You know, as a card-carrying member of the Zack Moss fan club here, I was Team Moss from prior to the draft, and I think the guy's got a lot of potential. I just don't know that Buffalo's going to let him do it. And by Buffalo, I really mean Josh Allen. So we'll see how that goes. We can all hope.
All right. Well, now that we know those answers, I want to know who is going to win the division and who is coming in last. So who's coming in first and who's coming in last? Kit.
For the division winner, I have the Buffalo Bills. I think it's pretty clear that they're the best team in the division. Patriots, don't seem to have it figured out at quarterback. They're doing things very differently than they did for 20 years with Tom Brady. So I don't think they're really going to give the Bills a run for their money. And in terms of who's going to finish last, it's going to be your Jets, JJ. Sorry to say it. I don't think that they're ready yet to begin flying, even if Zach Wilson's very good. They have a young line, they have a young set of targets, and their defense still isn't very good. So going to be a couple seasons before I think they're pushing the Bills and others in the division or in the AFC.
Okay. Don, your choices.
We'll start with Lasty McLasterson here, and I think my back end of it, I think I'm going to go off the grid here. I'm going with Miami. I think that offense is just a little young yet, and I just don't know that health is going to stay with them well enough. I love the potential, but I think just this year, and it's the last time we say it for a long time, it's them. And as dirty as it makes me feel, I feel like the North is going to win again, and the Patriots will win the division. It
okay.
makes me feel filthy, dirty, nasty, but I see Darth Hoodie pulling another one out.
Rob, who do you have?
I thought these were going to be slam dunk unanimous answers, but Don's really messing with me here. It's got to be the Bills as the best team in the AFC East. They were the best team last year. They've got Super Bowl aspirations. I think everyone else just has playoff aspirations. And the Jets have to be the worst team. I'm not trusting the rookie quarterback. I really like what they're building up there, but I'm not trusting the rookie quarterback to beat New England even once this year. They're not beating the Bills at all. Maybe they scrape by with one win against the Dolphins. They're not coming in third place in that division with one win against their opponents.
Yeah, I have to agree with you about Buffalo. I think that Buffalo easily wins the division. I think last place is the Jets. Although I love what they've done this season, they have no, outside of C.J. Mosley, who's missed the past 2 years, they have no linebackers with any experience. Their defense as a whole is questionable right now. I think that the defensive line plays coming up. Carl Lawson's going to show up. But this is, like I said about the Jets, this is a building year. Look for them just to get the locker room in order. They're easily coming in last. All right, well, gentlemen, it is time for tags where we tell the riders where they can find us and any final thoughts. Don?
As you know, guys, we've been saying this every week and we'll continue to do it. The place to find the real intel here is with the beat writers. Definitely definitely be following the beat writers for your respective team and get a look, because they're the only ones who have direct access to the teams. Half the time they can't necessarily say anything unless there were fans in the stands, but they at least have insights that the rest of us just are not privy to.
Rob.
You can find me on Reddit and on Twitter at @RoDoRob. And unlike JJ, I'm not really worried about what's going on above Zach Wilson's shoulders this year. I mean, the guy just aced his ACTs, his SATs. He wrote one hell of a college admissions essay. And, I mean, the guy's got a bright future.
Well, I'm at JJ Wenner. Thank you to Don, Kit, and Rob for helping put this together tonight. My tip for the pod, just because somebody has a blue check mark on Twitter, you don't have to listen to them. Check around. Check marks are kind of given out randomly now, a little oddly. So make sure you know your sources. And if somebody's saying something that doesn't make a lot of sense, ask some questions. It's always good to ask questions. But from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and remember, never say anything to make a meeting longer or cut a happy hour short. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.